Matthew here from Bold&Break. Today we're going to be looking at making UI elements, kind of background elements, how to quickly make them without necessarily starting off in Illustrator. This would be for something that if you had to kind of turn around very quickly, rather than kind of having a lot of time to make it. It's just kind of tips and tricks of how to make background UI elements. The type of UI I'm gearing this towards is more creatively driven UI. So for films, games, you know, kind of sci-fi maybe. It's not kind of functional UI I'm going for here. So this wouldn't be UI for like a website or a product or an app. Here's some examples of where you could kind of use this type of work. Okay, so let's get started. You're under pressure. You know, you have 3 days to make, UI, and you have, people frantically coming to your desk at an agency, and you're like, "Are you done?" It's like, "No, I've been here 5 minutes." So, in the first 5 minutes, you want to definitely start making a new comp. Call this UI 1, let's say. We're kind of going to explore how we can manipulate and art direct these kind of background elements. First, we want to make a new solid, call it BG, and make the color kind of a little bit off black. And let's pull our panel out here, grid. And down in generate, use this grid. And then we want to use the width and height sliders. And this gives us more control over how spaces we have. So let's make the border. I'll play with this. Okay, cool. Let's bring that out to the edge. So to kind of quickly generate stuff and ideas, let's start with in the distort effects CC Griddler, and you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm cutting up this, and this kind of gives a little control here. And so then maybe use Venetian blinds. A lot of this stuff and this kind of cutting up you can use with the After Effects transitions. So that's quite cool. We can control the width here. So then if we wanted to offset this, we can animate that, and that's super quick. And then let's duplicate this and go CC Tyler, put that over, and then you kind of have this kind of offset. You could even tile this one differently. So you have these kind of dots in the background that's offsetting against the foreground. So that's quite cool. So that's one kind of quick and dirty way to do it. Let's make a new comp. Let's do another style. Make a new solid, same thing again. And maybe let's use that grid effect again. So let's, instead of looking for those parameters, let's go into our comp and copy that grid back over. Make a new solid and make this white, maybe an off-white slightly. And go Venetian blinds again and give it an angle of 135. And bring up the width here. And then we want to use block dissolve. Turn off soft edges. Maybe make this 100 on the block width, 100 on the block height, and bring the transition completion up here. You can kind of see what I'm getting at already. And it kind of gives you control to manipulate these elements and overlay them. So let's kind of play with the width and height here. Let's use linear wipe and wipe that away. And all these kind of combined give you a little bit of, like, you could use that as a decal overlay. Another interesting technique which you can use is some of the keying effects are tools in After Effects. So let's use the inner outer key, and that can actually make our edge thinner. And the reason I do this instead of changing the width here is because we're restricted to this box that the effect is on. Whereas here we can separate the elements a bit more. So it's kind of, for instance, when we change the value here, or let's put Venetian blinds on again, and you get these kind of dotted lines across the screen. And let's use Venetian blinds on our base layer. And you have something quite cool here, because you can offset this top layer, and you can make it go across and glitch and stuff, and then you can bring it down, and you can do the exact same with using offset on your base layer. Okay, cool. That's so you kind of get the breakdown of using different transitional effects and the grid. And there's quite a bit of fun to be had. Obviously, to kind of make this come to life, you've got to comp it, design it, and lay it out right. Maybe add a little bit of glow, or a little bit of distortion. But this is kind of showing you how to get started. Okay, let's make a new composition. UI 3. Let's use the same grid again, actually, from E2, and let's go back into our effects panel, and let's try something interesting here with CC Tiler. And this is another really powerful effect when you're making these background elements, is you can, tile this to be really faint in the background. But if we were to use CC Collider, we'd get something interesting here. Something like that. You get this kind of, just randomly, we got this crosshair. And again, depending on where you place these effects, you'll get different results. Okay, so let's create a new composition. UI4, and we're going to combine what we've already created in the other two compositions, see what we can kind of do to make it feel more digital or a little bit more stylized. So we want to color correct it. So select UI1, go into color correction, toner, drag that over UI1, change the tones to solid. You can see we're getting a color change. Maybe go for something a little bit digital here. And let's add an adjustment layer. Look for a noise effect, and we're looking for noise alpha. Your adjustment layer. Bring that up, and you can see starting to get somewhere with how this looks. And you can see those overlaid elements are quite cool. And just mess around with this stuff, have a play. You see, because of that noise effect, it's kind of added its own gradient of color. Maybe add a glow. Bring that radius in a little bit. Tighten it up. Intensity down 2.3. And you've kind of got this overlaid, really cool background. And we've done that super quick. We've done that because we've experimented and played with things and stacked things very, very differently on one another. And that's why it's important to use these effects in creative ways and to stack them differently, and to not be afraid to just kind of jump in and see what this does or that does or the other thing. Because once you start to get your head around how these effects work in different ways, you can generate stuff really quickly, and it saves you time in the long run. I hope you got something from today. Hopefully you can use maybe some of the techniques here in other projects, not necessarily for your UI stuff, but to generate assets and graphics in your After Effects animations. Remember to subscribe if you liked the video. Comment below, what did you like, what did you hate? Go for it. Critique. It's all about critique here. And leave a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you want. It's all about getting people involved.